Ever had that moment when you walk into a bar, hear one familiar guitar riff, and instantly know, yeah, tonight's gonna be a good one? That's the magic of a great riff. 2 seconds, 4 notes, and suddenly millions of people around the world know exactly what song is playing. No vocals needed, no chorus, just guitar. So before we start, tell me in the comments, what's the first guitar riff that comes to your mind? And if your favorite riff doesn't make the list, don't be polite. Fight for it in the comments. Let's count down the 20 best guitar riffs everyone knows in 2 seconds. And if you're already enjoying the vibe, hit the like button as an advance payment for our hard work. If we don't earn it by the end, you can always take it back. Subscribe to the channel and let's get into it. Opening our countdown is Arctic Monkeys' Do I Wanna Know. By 2013, Arctic Monkeys had already been around for a decade. But with one slow, stomping riff, Alex Turner pushed them into a different stratosphere. That opening doesn't rush, it prowls. Confident, dangerous, almost cinematic. Built around a Vox Starstream 12-string the band had recently picked up, the riff felt, as Turner once suggested, like it came with the guitar itself. And with over 2 billion streams, Do I Wanna Know proved that the great guitar riff wasn't dead. It was just waiting for the right person, the right room, and the right instrument. At number 19, we get Dire Straits' Money for Nothing. Mark Knopfler doesn't play like most rock guitarists. He doesn't use a pick, he plays with his fingers. And that prowling, growling intro became legendary partly by accident. Knopfler had his amp wedged in a corner of the studio, mic'd in an unusual way, and the engineer captured a tone nobody could fully recreate later. The lyrics are just as strange. A guy in an appliance store complaining about MTV.
We got to move, refrigerator.
Sting sings backup. The whole thing should not work. It works perfectly. Coming in at number 18 is the Kinks' You Really Got Me. This is where rock guitar starts getting dangerous. Before Hendrix, before Sabbath, before punk and grunge. Dave Davies took a razor blade, slashed the cone of his small Elpico amplifier, and ran it through a bigger Vox amp. The result was one of the dirtiest guitar sounds people had heard on a pop record. Ray Davies built the song around 2 brutal chords. Simple, aggressive, impossible to ignore. Without You Really Got Me, rock still gets heavier eventually, but this riff kicked the door open. 2 chords, 1 riff, a whole future cracking open. At number 17, we get Cream's Sunshine of Your Love. That descending bluesy line, played together by Eric Clapton's guitar and Jack Bruce's bass, became one of the most copied riffs in rock history. Jack Bruce wrote it after seeing Jimi Hendrix perform live in London. He went home, picked up a stand-up bass and started playing the idea. Clapton heard it the next morning, and Cream had their crown jewel. Open the door to almost any modern hard rock band, and you'll probably find a piece of this riff hiding somewhere in the DNA. Coming in at number 16 is Aerosmith's Walk This Way. Joe Perry came up with the riff during a sound check in 1974 because he was bored. The band was waiting around at the music hall in Hawaii, and Perry started playing this funky syncopated pattern. Steven Tyler heard it from across the room and immediately knew there was something there. Then in 1986, the song got a second life with Run DMC, a crossover that helped revive Aerosmith's career and pushed rap into mainstream rock radio. 1 riff, 2 genres, generations of fans. At number 15, the riff becomes a weapon. Rage Against the Machine's Killing in the Name. Tom Morello wrote it while teaching a guitar lesson. He was showing a student drop D tuning, played a few notes, then stopped and grabbed a small tape recorder before the idea disappeared. The next day, Rage Against the Machine recorded it. Since 1992, this riff has soundtracked every kind of righteous anger. And in 2009, British music fans pushed it to UK Christmas #1, purely to protest the usual pop machine winner. That's a riff with a mission. At number 14, Eddie Van Halen makes simplicity sound dangerous. He reportedly called this riff a stupid, bad punk rock riff, which tells you everything about how casually a genius can operate. 2 chords, a guitar he built himself out of spare parts, a tone that didn't sound like anyone else. The phaser, the attack, the swagger, it all helped shape the modern rock guitar sound. Eddie didn't need to show every trick he had. On Ain't Talkin' About Love, the riff was enough. And most guitar players who came after him know exactly what they owe. At number 13, Randy Rhoads opens the gates to Crazy Train. He was only 23 when he wrote this riff. 2 years later, he would be gone in a plane crash that robbed rock guitar of one of its brightest minds. But the riff he left behind still plays in stadiums every day. That double stop bend, that tension and release, that strange mix of classical precision and metal attitude, Randy gave Ozzy's solo career the entrance it needed. Ozzy launched a new chapter with this song. Randy made it immortal. At number 12, the Beatles remind everyone they could write a riff as sharp as anyone. Day Tripper is the moment they proved a guitar line could carry a pop song almost by itself. John Lennon and George Harrison played that bluesy pattern in unison, giving the track a tighter, heavier edge than people expected from them at the time. It wasn't metal, it wasn't hard rock yet, but you can hear the future forming inside it. The Beatles didn't just write songs, they showed rock bands how a riff could become the hook. Just outside the top 10, we get Lynyrd Skynyrd's Sweet Home Alabama. DCG. 3 chords, that's it. Most guitar teachers would call it one of the easiest classic rock riffs to learn. But easy doesn't mean forgettable. This one became a national reflex. Skynyrd wrote it in 1974, partly as a response to Neil Young's Southern Man, and somehow the riff still sounds like a Sunday drive with the windows down. 50 years later, it's still one of the loudest sing-alongs in any American bar with a jukebox. 3 chords, a million memories. Now we enter the top 10, and AC/DC arrives like lightning. Angus Young plays the famous Thunderstruck intro using hammer-ons and pull-offs, making the riff feel like electricity running through a wire. He wanted something that sounded like a storm rolling in. Mission accomplished. This riff has been used in movies, sports arenas, gym playlists, and probably every situation where someone is about to do something stupid but heroic. It doesn't build slowly, it charges straight at you. 2 seconds in and the room already knows what's coming. At number 9, Metallica turns a nightmare into a stadium anthem. Kirk Hammett wrote the riff late at night, half asleep while on tour. He brought it to James Hetfield, who heard the potential immediately. They tightened it, darkened it, and built that ominous descending intro into the riff that took Metallica from thrash metal giants to one of the biggest rock bands on the planet. The Black Album sold more than 30 million copies worldwide, and every kid who ever picked up an electric guitar has probably tried this riff at least once. Badly, loudly, proudly. At number 8, 4 power chords blow a hole through the 1990s. Kurt Cobain said he was trying to write the ultimate pop song. He also admitted he was basically trying to rip off the Pixies. Instead, he helped end the 80s. The clean intro, then the explosion. That quiet, loud, quiet dynamic became the blueprint for an entire decade of alternative rock. The riff itself is simple. That's why it worked. Anyone could feel it. Anyone could play it badly in a bedroom. And suddenly, grunge wasn't underground anymore. It was everywhere. At number 7, Slash accidentally writes one of the most famous guitar openings ever. He has often said he didn't take the riff seriously at first. It started as a finger exercise in a Hollywood rehearsal space, until Izzy Stradlin began playing chords behind it and Axl Rose heard his song. That bright circular arpeggio became the only Guns N' Roses single to hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Slash may have spent years trying to escape it, but the world never did. Now it's the riff every aspiring lead guitarist learns first. There's no escaping magic, even when the guitarist doubts it. At number 6, we get the plot twist. The bass line isn't a bass. Jack White played a K hollow body guitar through a Digitech whammy pedal set 1 octave down, and accidentally created the most chanted riff of the 21st century. He came up with it during a sound check at the Corner Hotel in Melbourne in 2002. At one point, he even thought it worked as a James Bond theme. His label didn't think it should be a single. They were spectacularly wrong. Today, that riff echoes through football stadiums on 6 continents. At number 5, AC/DC comes back from the dead. Their lead singer Bon Scott had died in 1980. Most bands would have collapsed. AC/DC hired Brian Johnson, went to the Bahamas, and Angus and Malcolm Young wrote one of the most defiant comeback riffs in rock history. 2 clean guitar hits, a pause, then that signature slide. It's a riff that doesn't ask for your attention, it demands it. More than 40 years later, Back in Black remains one of the best-selling albums ever made, and that riff still sounds unbeatable. At number 4, heavy metal starts walking like a machine. First, the robot voice, I am Iron Man. Then the riff, slow, massive, and almost prehistoric. Tony Iommi came up with it in rehearsal while drummer Bill Ward was playing a slow, ominous beat. Ozzy heard it and said it sounded like a big iron bloke walking around. That image became the song's title. Geezer Butler wrote the lyrics about a time traveler who turns to steel and destroys humanity. And no, despite the Marvel movies, this song has nothing to do with Tony Stark. Now we've reached the top 3, and number 3 belongs to the Rolling Stones. Keith Richards says he wrote this riff in his sleep. He woke up, recorded the idea into a tape recorder, and went back to bed. The next morning, the tape had about 30 seconds of riff, followed by 40 minutes of snoring. That fuzz tone, created with a Maestro fuzz tone pedal, became the sound of rock and roll frustration. Keith thought it might later be replaced by horns. The world disagreed. Instead, the riff became an anthem for boredom, desire, rebellion, and dissatisfaction itself. At number 2, Jimmy Page gives us one of the dirtiest riffs ever recorded. He wrote Whole Lotta Love in the summer of 1968, while sitting on his houseboat on the River Thames. That simple 3-note pattern, with its octave drop, became the opening track of Led Zeppelin II, and one of the most recognizable hard rock riffs in history. There's something about it that sounds dangerous in a way few riffs do. Its swagger turned all the way up, the sound of a band realizing they were about to take over the world. And of course, number 1. If guitar riffs had a holy book, Smoke on the Water would be in the first chapter. 4 notes, 3 fingers, 1 immortal melody. Ritchie Blackmore wrote it after Deep Purple watched the Montreux Casino burn down during a Frank Zappa concert in 1971. The smoke drifted over Lake Geneva, and the story became the song. Blackmore later said the riff was inspired by Beethoven's Fifth, which is either genius or the greatest troll in rock history. Every guitar store on earth has heard this riff today, probably twice. It's the first riff most people learn, the last riff they forget, and the only riff that sounds like the building catching fire that inspired it. There was never going to be anything else at number 1.
We all came out to Montreux.
So that's our list. 20 riffs, 2 seconds each to recognize. A combined billion years of guitar mythology, and probably one more we forgot. So drop it in the comments. What's the riff we missed? Layla? Black Dog? LaGrange? Tell us. Argue with us. Tell us we got the order wrong. We probably did. And tell us, should Smoke on the Water really be number 1, or is your pick somewhere higher up the list? If this video brought you back to a moment, a bar, a car ride, the first time you ever picked up a guitar, hit the like button. It really helps the channel. And subscribe for more deep dives into the music that shaped our lives. Until next time, keep the riffs loud.